This is Robin on the Road, your concierge for all things travel. And during the creation of this video, the Pentagon grew ever closer to removal of the Confederate memorial from Arlington National Cemetery. This memorial was put up by a country trying to heal itself, and presidents from Theodore Roosevelt to Barack Obama have laid wreath here during the Confederate Memorial Day in June. If Arlington Cemetery is truly a shrine, the removal of this memorial is a desecration. Please contact your senators and House member. And thank you, and enjoy my video. This is Robin on the Road, your concierge for all things travel, and today I'd like to take you on the road with me to Arlington National Cemetery and a tour of the memorials. Pack your bags, let's go! On a recent on-the-road trip to Arlington, Virginia, I had the pleasure of visiting Arlington National Cemetery. I have been to Arlington many times during my life, and I can tell you it is one of the most beautiful places to visit. Set on the hills above Washington, D.C., the cemetery will affect you, and the memories of this place will stay with you for the rest of your life. For it's in these hallowed grounds that the story of our country and the men and women who fought for it is not only told, but visualized. A very thorough search will be conducted before you enter the visitor center. Water may be purchased or brought in, but no food or alcohol is permitted. Open 365 days a year, the hours are seasonal. Maps and brochures, significant history and information can be found at the Visitor Center. Tickets for the tour bus can also be purchased here. Check the Arlington website and make sure that the days you are visiting that the bus is running. There is a bookstore located at the Visitor Center as well. Bathrooms are here, plus at the Tomb of the Unknown and the Mansion. Plan before you visit Arlington. There are so many graves and a lot of ground to cover. The Arlington website is an excellent resource. Wheelchairs and strollers are not rented at the Visitor Center but can be accommodated. There is paid parking lot at the cemetery and a metro stop just outside the gates. I was at the cemetery for 6 hours, and it was not possible for me to visit all the graves that I had on my list. As you leave the Museum and Visitor Center, stop to admire the Battle of the Bulge Memorial. Considered the greatest battle of World War II, it will take place in the Ardennes Forest region of Belgium from December 16, 1944 to January 25, 1945. The battle will end the German counteroffensive, but at a great cost, with 75,000 casualties, including 19,000 dead. The memorial was dedicated in May 2006 in a ceremony attended by 300 veterans and their family members. Its main inscription reads, "To the World War II American soldiers who fought in the Battle of the Bulge, the greatest land battle in the history of the United States Army." Text on the base of the memorial reads, "Triumph of Courage, and from the grateful people of the Kingdom of Belgium and the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg." On my way down the road, I passed the McClellan Gate. This was the original entrance to Arlington National Cemetery. Named for Civil War General George B. McClellan, it rises 30 feet above the ground. Atop the arch facing east, inscribed in gold, are lines from Theodore O'Hara's poem, Bivouac of the Dead. "On fame's eternal camping ground their silent tents are spread, and glory guards with solemn round the bivouac of the dead." Other lines from the poem are on the west-facing arch. "Rest on embalmed and sainted dead, dear as the blood ye gave. No impious footsteps here shall tread on the herbage of your grave." Crossing over Bradley Drive, I head to my next stop, the 9/11 Pentagon Group Burial Marker. With the Pentagon in the background, dedicated to the people who were killed in the 9/11 terrorist attack on the Pentagon, plus American Airlines Flight 77, the plane that struck the Pentagon. So many names of people who were living their lives and became innocent victims. On September 12, 2002, a funeral service will be held at the Memorial Amphitheater to honor the 184 victims and recognition for those victims who were not found. The memorial is located in Section 64. From the Pentagon Memorial Marker, I head up Arnold Drive to locate the World War I memorial tree. Hiking uphill, I located two markers that were not on my list. The first is the U.S. Coast Guard Memorial, which was dedicated in May 1928. The monument was designed by architect George Howe and sculptor Gaston Lachey. The memorial includes a bronze seagull atop a rock foundation and pyramid design. Above, the Coast Guard motto, Semper Paratus, always ready. The seagull symbolizes the Coast Guard's tireless vigil over the nation's maritime territory. The names of two vessels, one, Seneca, which on September 16, 1918, volunteered for a rescue party to salvage the British steamer Wellington, which had been torpedoed by a German submarine. 11 of the 19 volunteers will lose their lives when Wellington explodes and sinks. 10 days later, on September 26, an enemy submarine sank the cutter Tampa in the British Channel, killing all 131 on board. The name of other Coast Guard personnel who lost their life during World War I are inscribed here. The monument is located in Section 4. Across from the Coast Guard Memorial in Section 8 is the monument and marker to Robert Edwin Peary and Mathew Henson, the men who discovered the North Pole on April 6, 1909. Peary joined the U.S. Naval Civil Engineer Corps, and after several failed attempts to the North Pole and many lost toes, his 1908 expedition, which will be his last, is when he and Henson discover the pole. His wife Josephine is also buried here. She was an explorer in her own right, and in 1891 will become the first woman to explore the Arctic. Mathew Henson was an African-American born to sharecropper parents in Maryland. He was orphaned at a young age and spent several years at sea as a cabin boy. Peary hires him as an assistant, and between 1891 and 1909 they will conduct 7 Arctic expeditions. Henson's 1912 book, A Negro Explorer at the North Pole, will tell of his experience. Peary receives a Congressional Medal of Honor and promotion to admiral. Henson will not get official recognition until 1944 before he passes in 1955. He is buried in New York's Woodlawn Cemetery. In 1988, he will be reinterred in Arlington next to Peary, a long overdue honor. Section 21 is sometimes called the Nurses Section. Originally for nurses who had volunteered for the Spanish-American War, there is a memorial for them made of granite and featuring a Maltese cross. This is a resting place for 653 nurses who heroically served the U.S. Armed Forces. Against a backdrop of evergreens, an 11-foot-tall white Tennessee marble statue appears to gaze reverently upon the deceased nurses that lie before her. Representing the spirit of nursing, the figure wears simple attire with her hair pinned up. Sculpted by Francis Rich and unveiled in 1938, the statue initially honored nurses who had died in the service for the Army or Navy. Its meaning has since been expanded to include all nurses who served in the U.S. Armed Forces. An authorization to install a bronze plaque over the existing inscription on the Nurses Memorial reads, "This monument was erected in 1938 and rededicated in 1971 to commemorate devoted service to country and humanity by Army, Navy, and Air Force nurses." Arlington has more memorials and grave sites to the Spanish-American War than any other American cemetery. The war was our first major conflict after the Civil War and played a key role in reuniting the country. On May 21, 1902, President Theodore Roosevelt will dedicate a memorial. Standing 50 feet high, it is made from bar granite. The top has a bronze eagle perched on a spear. Black granite spheres stand at each corner of the base, and 44 bronze stars line the border of the upper base. Behind the monument stand 4 Spanish naval guns captured during the war. The 2 inner guns are from the Spanish-American War era, the 2 outer from destroyed Spanish vessels, and they date from 1857 and 1831. This is located in Section 22. 1898, Cuba was fighting Spain for sovereign control. Concerned about American interests, President William McKinley will send the U.S. Maine and a crew of 355 to Havana Harbor. February 15, 1898, the battleship explodes, killing 260 service members. The remains of 230 of these men rest here. While historians argue about the cause of the explosion, the public outcry of "Remember the Maine" and fear of colonization causes the United States to declare war on Spain on April 25th of 1898. The result of this war is a healing from the Civil War, as soldiers who had fought for the Confederacy join the American Army and fight on our side. But Spain will also cede Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. Cuba will fall under our protection. Initially, the dead were buried in Havana, but in December of 1899, 165 remains will be reinterred at Arlington. Then, in 1910, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers begin to raise the Maine. 65 additional bodies are recovered. In March of 1912, the mast of the Maine will be placed on a granite turret base. There are 2 bronze mortars captured in Spain, and the ship's bell is placed in the door. The monument was dedicated in May of 1915 by President Woodrow Wilson. It is located in Section 24. From here, I head down McPherson Drive to Section 22 and the memorial to the Rough Riders. Honoring the first volunteer U.S. cavalry, the memorial was dedicated in 1906 to this most famous cavalry unit. Known for their charge of San Juan Hill during the bloodiest and most decisive battle of the Spanish-American War. I continue down Farragut Avenue to Section 16, known as the Confederate Burial Section. Dominated by the Confederate Memorial, this section sadly has returned to being a contentious one. There are some in the Pentagon who want this memorial removed. After the Spanish-American War had reunited the country, allowing former Confederate soldiers to again participate in the armed forces, Congress will authorize the reinterment of Confederate remains at Arlington, with more than 400 men brought here from around the Washington, D.C. area. The memorial was erected in 1914 and was designed by Confederate veteran and noted sculptor Moses Jacob Ezekiel. The statue stands on a 32-foot-high pedestal with 4 urns representing the 4 years of war. 32 life-size figures depict mythical gods alongside Southern civilians and soldiers. 2 African Americans are depicted in a romanticized take on slavery. At the time the memorial was put up at Arlington, the cemetery was segregated, and the African American soldiers who had fought for the Union were being denied burial here. Relenting, the soldiers were buried in Section 27. Whatever your feelings are about the war, this memorial was placed by a country trying to heal from a devastating civil war, and presidents from Theodore Roosevelt to Barack Obama have laid wreath here on June 7th, the Confederate Memorial Day. Healing must continue, or another war may be fought. The U.S. Army 3rd Division Memorial was dedicated on August 15, 1990. The 9-ton gray obelisk lists the battles fought by the division. Formed in 1917, the division will distinguish itself through the Korean War, fighting in 24 campaigns with 52,125 men killed, wounded, or missing. The Canadian Cross originally honored Americans who had fought with the Canadian Army in World War I prior to the entry of America in the war. A bronze sword adorns a 24-foot-high gray granite cross, which is known as the Cross of Sacrifice. Following World War II and the Korean War, additional inscriptions were added to honor Americans who had served with the Canadian Army. Korean War Memorial Contemplative Bench was dedicated on July 27, 1987, in a ceremony attended by the Korean War veterans and the South Korea's ambassador. It is surrounded by trees donated by South Korea. It honors the 54,246 dead, 8,177 missing, and 389 unaccounted for POWs. The Battle of the Bulge Memorial was a gift from the people of Belgium for their gratitude to the soldiers of the U.S. Army who fought from December 16, 1944 to January 25, 1945. Walking through Section 7, I cross over one of the original waterways that belonged to the plantation and cross into Section 2 and up Chaplains Hill. Military chaplains from Over 4 wars rest here, including the first Army chaplains from World War I and II. Vietnam chaplain Major Charles Joseph Waters received the Medal of Honor posthumously for his bravery trying to render aid to his fallen comrades. The second monument to the 134 Protestant chaplains who lost their lives in World War I and II was dedicated in 1981. The third monument is to 83 Catholic chaplains who died in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, and was dedicated in 1989. The most recent monument is for 14 Jewish chaplains who died in active duty in the armed forces and was dedicated in 2011. On December 21, 1988, Pan Am Flight 103 was blown up by a terrorist bomb over Lockerbie, Scotland. 11 of the 270 souls lost were on the ground. The cairn is a memorial and gift from the people of Scotland, raised by private funds. It contains 270 sandstone blocks from a quarry 8 miles from the disaster. The monument is located in Section 1. Things to know before you go. Arlington National Cemetery is open daily from 8 to 5. Water may be brought in or purchased, but no other food or beverages are allowed. A thorough bag check and 100% ID check is conducted at the Visitor Center. Parking is $3 an hour with a max of $12. No pets except for those with disabilities are allowed. Tram tours depart every 20 minutes from 8:30 to 4:30. The tour is a live narrated loop and an on-again, off-again tour that makes 4 stops. Tickets can be purchased at the Visitor Center or online. Check with the cemetery as trams do not run on special occasion. Adults are $19.50, children are $10.75, and seniors $15, with special prices for military and veterans. The changing of the guard ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is conducted every hour on the hour in winter and every half an hour during the summer months. Wheelchairs and strollers are not provided at the visitor centers but may be brought in. The ground is undulating and there are lots of ankle twisting holes throughout, so watch your step. There are several honored days. Flags and wreaths are placed on all graves during military holidays and Christmas. The Arlington National Cemetery webpage and app are an excellent source for information. There are so many graves to see, and even though I had a plan, I ran out of steam before I was able to see all the graves on my list. Take time to plan and then expect surprises. You will not be able to see all the graves in one day. For this on-the-road trip, I chose to stay at the Hyatt Regency Crystal City. It was actually less expensive than some other choices, including an Airbnb. Be aware that nothing is included with your room. That means meals or parking. There are free trams to the metro, or you can walk to one in about 10 minutes. The metro is the best way I have found to get around, and there is a station right outside Arlington Cemetery. I will provide links in my description. Lastly, I would like to thank you, fellow traveler, for joining me on a tour of Arlington Cemetery, memorials, and monuments. Please smack that bell and subscribe, and smash that like button if you've enjoyed my videos. Also, check out my latest video on Bulow Sugar Plantation. Until then, this is Robin on the Road, your concierge for all things travel, and I hope to see you out there on a road of your own. Until then, safe travels.